All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us for another edition of the broadcast. This is the Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017 edition of the show. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you so much for being back here with us again for another broadcast. Today's going to be a part two of yesterday's broadcast because I didn't really get all the stuff out. I wanted to talk about some of that stuff, but we'll talk about some different stuff as well. But I just had some more comments about some of the topics I had brought up yesterday, so we'll get into that, and we'll see also if I have some more listener stuff to address. I know somebody a while back wanted to know what I knew about Stephen Greer, and well, you know, the thing about Stephen Greer is I haven't had to explain him in a while. He's pretty self-explanatory. No offense to the listener that asked the question, but honestly, he's pretty self-explanatory to most everybody now. But if you still need some explanation, I mean, there's a lot of people always throw around, and rightly so in some cases, a lot of the terms that get thrown around. So these people from shill to plant to, whatever, disinfo agent, provocateur, whatever you want to call it. These terms get shuffled around a lot, and sometimes they apply 100%, and other times they're applied and that it doesn't really make sense. Like Alex Jones for years calling people COINTELPRO, and then that got picked up by people, and this person so and so is COINTELPRO, and like they're misappropriating a term when that actual term does not apply currently. It applies to 1960s civil rights stuff and FBI, having informants and plants, much like they do now. But that was a term that was applied to a specific operation. So anyway, stuff like that. But because that's people have asked me, honestly, people have been asking me about Greer. Many researchers in the research community, if you don't know this or not, many refer to him as Greer the Queer, and have for some time. I don't know if you guys saw the gay male dating thing that came out on him some years ago. That was fucking hilarious. Now, like it was literally him. You could tell. I mean, the measurements it fit him and everything, and you could see the picture. It was clearly him. It's probably been scrubbed off the internet at this point. I used to have a copy of it, but that's whether he's gay or not was not really here nor there as far as the information is concerned. But I still had to laugh at it. It was funny. It was funny when people had been calling him that for years, and then here was this like dating site thing, and he didn't deny it either, which I thought was kind of funny. But I don't think that he technically falls under the category of like what you would call a shill, or he could be. He very well could be. But in my opinion, I don't think he is. He's just like this is kind of the best way I've described to that guy for years. He's like a used car salesman. He's just greasy, just dirty. Those fucking, you've seen them. Those fucking used car salesmen or whoever they are, it's fucking hucksters. These guys look like they'd fucking sell their mother for, to get their fucking quota for the week. I mean, just anything to make a buck, anything, doesn't matter how true it is. And of course, he's proven that time and time again with his phony, what was that, Sirius with the little fucking tiny alien thing. And he, goddamn, dude, he did the circuit and got everybody fucking believing that shit was real and people vouching for him, and shit. And then, they do tests. And of course, like everybody knew, it's 100% fake. So yeah, there's not really much more I could say about the guy. I mean, his whole team quit on him after that. Some of these guys I think are, there are ones that we can, especially when you see stuff like what I've tied together in my latest documentary, The Spellcasters. When you see the connections that I've tied to these guys and into stuff in the intelligence community, dead connections to the intelligence community, dead connections to massive psychological warfare operations that have been going on for decades and been in the works for decades, and seeing those ties back to people like Alex Jones and other people, Stubblebines of the world, and, the Health Ranger guy and all that stuff with Stubblebine. And then you see Stubblebine's connections directly to not only Scientology related individuals, but specifically psychological warfare and MK Ultra and all the rest of those connections back to that. And so, again, that's what I detail all in the Spellcasters. Go get yourself a download of that right now if you haven't seen it at my website, theglobalreality.com. And that's, again, there are certainly those, and those do exist, and people need to be aware of those. But I think there are absolutely are, because I've run into them too. There are people who aren't necessarily, even though, they could be, but it's not. Greer does not fit the profile for somebody who is one of these, government clowns. He just fits the profile of just somebody, and there's a lot of those. So just, hucksters in it trying to make a buck, and in it to make a buck and a fast buck and the rest of it. And, it's funny, as I said yesterday, I've spent a lot of my time here, and almost 10 years now I've been on air. And, I'm always good, man. I can always, my whole life I've had this sixth sense about trends and things. I can see like phony stuff coming a mile away. I've always had that even since I was a very little kid, and I have it to this day. And I can remember when the Zeitgeist movie first came out. And everybody, it went completely viral. I mean, it was like the biggest online video ever. And I just immediately, from seeing how fast, information videos like that don't spread, folks, that viral that quickly unless they have a push and an agenda behind them. They just flat don't. And a lot of the information in there, it was misconstrued. It was truth mixed with untruth. And from the very beginning, I fucking was all over. This is a great example, because when I first started coming out with the CMP stuff, nobody wanted to, literally nobody wanted to hear it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to discuss it. And, now it's become just accepted fact within a lot of researchers. And I see, I can't tell you all the time I get sent stuff. I get sent radio shows and interviews and stuff all the time now from, conspiracy talk radio shows and stuff, where there are people doing shows on the CMP where they've taken my script from the not spellcasters, but the Secret Riot or something, verbatim. And they just, all they could have to say is, hey, if you're interested in this information, there is a film you can see on it. But they don't even do that. They don't even give me credit, because they assume that because so many few people know about it, that they can just get away with making it as their own. But unfortunately, everybody within the it's been involved in this kind of research for any amount of time knows that although there were researchers and people out there doing this stuff before me, nobody that was in the current crop of conspiracy researchers or truth researchers at that time, especially when everybody was just going with the herd and believing everything about from 9/11 Truth to Alex Jones, nobody else was coming along. There were people, but all that stuff was just, a lot of stuff was coming out at that time was not, it was just conjecture and stuff. The stuff we've got now that connects all these people directly to these groups and psychological warfare operations. It's just dead to rights at this point, but it's still, the big hill is trying to get it out to people, trying to get it out to more people. And, but again, back to the Zeitgeist thing, I tell you, that was the same kind of thing I experienced. Well, I've continued to experience to this very day. With the Trump stuff most recently, and then, the flat earth stuff that came on. I've been experiencing this. This has just been par for the course for me. But the Zeitgeist thing was the first one where I was the only one, man. I was the lone guy. Everybody bought into that. Friends, people I knew, everybody was buying into the whole Zeitgeist thing. And I said, it's horseshit, because it gives you just enough of the truth to make you think that it's, that this is the case. But again, it's not what they say. It's what they don't say. And, the misconstruing of a lot of the information from the very beginning. And then, it got huge, and they made other movies. And then eventually the guy who made it came right out after he cashed in, made tons of money, got on Netflix, came right out and said he had no interest in the truth. And it was a money grab. There was somebody else that did that with one of the 9/11 films too. I don't remember if it was I don't think it was the Loose Change guys. I don't think it was, but it could have been. There was somebody else in that whole realm and scope. There's been several, there have been people that have come out, and that's, these people see a window and they come in and they think they can just come in and make a bunch of money and leave, and they're on to something else, and that just sickens me because, again, you don't get that kind of push and reach the kind of people that the Loose Changes and the Zeitgeist got, especially when really those films weren't that great anyway. But again, it's all about money. Everything's pay to play. It always has been. If I had, that's the thing. I put out a film, and then it's done, and then we still have to come up with all the money to put it together and put the package out and all that. By the time we get the film done and we're getting ready to go on to the next one, there's never even, we don't even make enough back from the films to even, and it's not like they cost us a lot to make, but it all has to do with reach and how many people you can reach, So just with the means of the people that we are able to reach now, unless I get to go on a big talk show like Coast to Coast to Him or something, which I have twice, then that helps in a big way. But if that doesn't happen, really, I can go on all these other little small shows all day long and do tons of interviews like I have for all my films. And, we'll get some, and we get, we'll get, if we're lucky, if we're going on a bigger show, like a Freeman show or something like that, we might get 30 or 40. And it's just, which is crazy when I saw how many views, and I think got like 20,000 views in like the first 24 hours. I'm just thinking, if just 500 or 1,000 of those people could buy a film, we would be able to make the next one and have money to promote this one. So that, if you had, it really takes on top of what it takes to make a film. If you want to properly promote it, you're going to need an additional $5,000 to $10,000 on top of whatever the initial budget is just to promotion, because all the stuff because people always say, well, why don't you get it on Hulu or Netflix or iTunes or all that? Well, I can, but it costs $1,500. It's like $1,500 for, just an attempt. Now, of course, if they don't accept it or whatever, but you have to meet all these standards. Everything has to be in you have to have closed captioning for everything. I don't know if you've seen a film like the Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1 that I made. That thing had, there's so many lines of dialogue in there. The movie's almost 4 hours long. So that means you either got to do it yourself or you have to go have somebody take. And that thing had, can't remember exactly what the word count on it was. I did a word count on all my films, and that one like smoked all of them. And then Spellcasters was gigantic word count. So you have to take all of that, which is much more difficult in a film like a documentary like I do, where it's all narration, as opposed to like a TV show or a movie. That's very easy to do because you already have predetermined dialogue in those places. But so you have to do that. You have to get the close, which can be done. I could get it done. But again, that's another, it's going to cost to get that done. It's like $1,500 for them to try to get you on Netflix, and there's no guarantee that they're going to, that you're going to get it. If you don't get it, you end up getting some of your money back minus a fee or whatever. And if you do get it up on Netflix, they don't really tell you because you don't get any, you get like they lease it for a year or whatever, for a set amount, and they pay you up front or whatever. But they don't give you any indication how much that's going to be before you give them the $1,500 to maybe have a chance to get it on Netflix. You see what I'm saying? So, and same thing with iTunes, you have closed captioning. It's like $1,000, I think, to get it up on iTunes or something like that. It's very different from getting like a music, like I could put out, because I'm also a musician, and, I don't play in band, I haven't played in bands in a while, but I still play and, do stuff for the soundtracks and write all the music, compose all that. And I still play a variety, I play drums, guitar, bass, keyboards, sing, everything. But, I could, if I was still putting out records, I could put out a record right now. I could have that motherfucker up on iTunes, boom, before the end of the show's over tonight. It's not the same way with movies and films and all that stuff. It's a lot more difficult. There's a lot more rigmarole to go through, and a lot more red tape and paperwork and money. So yeah, you're, like I said, just to have the opportunity to maybe possibly be able to get your stuff on Netflix, iTunes, and then maybe Hulu. That's a separate charge. You're looking at You're looking around $3,000 up front, just for the chance that they'll say yes and it'll get accepted. Again, if you don't, you get your money back minus a fee. But there are no other ways to do it. There's no other way to go around it. And that's what the movie studios and whatnot give to film directors and the rest of it. That's why because that's the worst thing you could do. But that's where they get them, because these film studios have the ability to get their stuff placed instantaneously right into the marketplace because they're already in it. But if you're not already plugged into the marketplace and you're independent and stuff like that, then because for a record label or a movie studio, to have to pay $3,000 or whatever up front, that's nothing for them. They're spending millions on these projects. $3,000 for us at our level is an entire film budget. You see what I'm saying? So we would basically have to we would have to double what our film budget. We don't even most of the time reach our film budgets as it is. Sometimes we do. We get lucky. But a lot of times we don't even reach our film budgets as it is. We didn't for Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 3. That's why that film's never come out. Even though it's 60% shot. Yes, that's right. 60% of that film is shot and in the can and sitting on hard drives, but probably will never see the light of day because, again, like everything, it takes money to do it. It's not free, especially when you're starting to make films. And that's what we really strive to do the most with really beginning with Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1. When I'm very grateful where that, there's actually been several schools here in Texas. I've gotten emails from teachers and stuff. There's actually been several schools here in Texas that have actually shown Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1 in their classrooms and got approved to do it. Isn't that crazy? That's amazing. So anybody who doubts the validity of that work, it's the public schools, man, they're one of the biggest restrictors of information there is. So just the fact that there's even teachers out there that are into this type of information and are at least making the effort to at least show younger people that this stuff exists. Nobody's trying to recruit. I certainly am not, and I actually don't encourage younger people to listen to my show because it's not for younger people. I get so sick of that shit in our politically correct world we live in now, where they want everybody to sanitize everything. Look, there's some stuff is for adults. This whole thing where they just I don't want to get on that rant, but you know what it is. It goes back to the whole homogenization of everybody. That's why they're doing away with gender, doing away with race. Let's do away with individuality at all to make a homogenized, sexless, raceless, homogenized people. Because when you do that, the next thing in line to be homogenized is free thought. It goes right along with it. That's no joke. But yeah, it is. Anyway, better stop there for a because I got other stuff I want to talk about before I go on a huge rant. Whew. Get me fucking started, folks. Doesn't take much. Doesn't take much. Yesterday, I talked about the Grammys. I talked about Megadeth. I forgot to mention this. I can't believe I forgot to mention this because it was fucking hilarious. Did I mention? I did mention it, didn't I? I can't remember. I mentioned the Megadeth thing. I mentioned they won a Grammy. I mentioned they got nominated 12 times. This was, finally won. Did I mention, though, did I mention the Master of Puppets thing? I guess I did. I can't remember if I did or not. If I didn't, let me do it again, because that was fucking hilarious. My God. Dave Mustaine was a founding member of Metallica. I mean, I actually finally got, there's a bootleg. Finally got a good copy of it and remastered it. Got a lot of the hiss out of it. This is old shit that was recorded on cassette, so it was never officially released. It's only available in bootlegs, but I actually have the recordings, like the original. I'm going to put them up on my YouTube channel soon if you're interested in that kind of thing. The remastered versions I did, because they really sound way more excellent than anything else you'll find out there online of these. But it's called Dave 'Em All. So, the first Metallica was called Kill 'Em All. Well, this is called Dave 'Em All. This is all like the first, basically what, the early Metallica stuff would have sounded like had they actually gotten around to making the records with Dave Mustaine. But, and it's fantastic, I mean, it really is. It's all that early stuff, Creeping Death and all that stuff with Dave playing on it. And the thing is, they were still using his songs like all the way through up to like Master of Puppets, even though he told them not to. I mean, they were even like stuff like Call of Cthulhu, and I know for a fact Call of Cthulhu and Ride the Lightning, the song Ride the Lightning, were both Dave Mustaine pieces of music that he wrote. And it's funny because they kicked him out before he wasn't even on Kill 'Em All. They didn't let him. They're still using his music. That's because, like, the fact of the matter is, Dave Mustaine essentially molded that band into what they became. It's not not even up for contention. They didn't know about Diamond Head or any of the new wave of British heavy metal bands that they claim were their influences until Dave gave the records to Lars. And that now they're, of course, the revisionist historians exist not only in the real world, but in the musical world as well. And, that's how it always goes. These revisionist music historians, and you see that happening more and more. Now they'll tell you, oh, they were into that, whatever. But it's just not a fact. Dave Mustaine used to sell weed to a girl that worked at a record store, and she would trade Dave all these rare, obscure British import records like Diamond Head and Saxon and, a lot of the early stuff like that in exchange for weed. And so when they sort of started hanging out together with, Lars and James, that's really what molded the later Metallica thing. But it's funny because I talked about the Lady Gaga thing last night, and the metal community's just been going crazy because of the Metallica and Lady Gaga thing. And it's funny because, as I talked about yesterday, the Grammys are clueless. Of course, we've all known that. And they love doing these weird, strange pairings. But, everybody was saying, oh, the Grammys are so terrible. And, oh, the Grammys, way to go, Grammys. Great idea of putting, Lady Gaga with Metallica. And I had to set some people straight on YouTube. Like, no. Y'all need to do your homework. And you need to go read the quotes. This was not put together by the Grammys. I know it's easy to think with all the other shit shows they put together that, I could see where someone would assume that. But go read this. No, this was all Metallica. This was Lars Ulrich himself saying she's the quintessential fifth member of the band. We're not done. We're going to, we'll record together eventually down the road. They were hanging out at dinner or something and put this together themselves. I hate to have to spoil it for the Metallica fans out there. But Metallica has been a mainstream pop act since the Black Album in 1991. Hate to burst your bubble for those of you who are still out there flying the flag for metal and still thinking that they've been on the same level of a pop act as a Lady Gaga for over 25 years, folks. That's just the sad reality of it. But yet, you get these metalheads and they think that their music's pure and no record labels ever tried to push it down anybody's throats. Right. Now, look, the facts, I like a lot of different types of music. I like metal, I like rock, I like country, old country. I don't like that new horse shit, of course. Most anything new is horse shit and isn't even the new metal. I can't tell you a majority of the new, almost every, I can't even tell you one metal band that's even recent that's any good. Other than, there's one, Children of Bodom. I used to play them a lot back when we used to do the network stream. They're from Sweden. I like them. They're fucking rad. Other than that, there aren't too many. I was just having the same conversation with my brother earlier because he asked me about this band Ghost. And they're another great example of form over substance. Look, I mean, a lot of bands have come out with, you can have a great image, and Ghost is this band, if you know who they are. They came to prominence, speaking of Metallica, they came to prominence back in like 2009 because James Hetfield from Metallica was wearing one of their shirts. So then everybody just started wearing their shirts and probably had never even heard one note of their music because they have this really, it's a really kind of like a Catholic, Vatican, satanic type of image. And they look frighteningly scary. Nobody goes by their real name. They look like demons. They all call themselves a nameless ghoul. Instead of everybody having, nobody in the band has an individual identity. Everybody in the band is just a nameless ghoul. So literally, when you see an interview with them, it just says interview with a nameless ghoul. It could be fucking the drummer. It could be the singer. You don't fucking know who it is because it just says a nameless ghoul. So when I first saw these guys, I was like, oh man, if these guys' music is any kind of good to match that fucking image, I mean, you're looking at the next Kiss, the next Alice Cooper, the next Marilyn Manson, whatever. And, unfucking fortunately, of course, just as you would expect, their music totally sucks. Totally sucks. It's terrible. God, it's such a travesty to see, because that's one of the key things, man. If you could nail, and very few people do and ever have, but if you can find that winning formula and nail that down as an act, and have the music and the image and have both and have them simultaneously working in conjunction with each other, you've got it. And of course, it never works that way. It always either goes way too far into the musical area, which is more preferable, with not a lot of image, kind of like Rush or, Dream Theater or, any of these bands where, great technicality of music and great musicians, but not so much in the look. And then of course you had all the 80s rock and hair bands and whatnot, where they had the look and the image, but again, just like with Ghost, just total shit music, totally terrible. So I thought the whole thing with everybody freaking out about Lady Gaga being with Metallica, it's hilarious because, again, number one, again, they've been a mainstream pop act for over 25 years. Period. End of story. They spent $1.5 million on that piece of shit Black album. They spent 6 months, ladies and gentlemen, working on a kick drum sound for one song. Not a kick drum sound for the whole record. They spent 6 months on a kick drum sound for once. How fucking far up your own ass do you got to be? Because I'm a drummer and I'm an engineer and a producer, and I can tell you right now, while drums are the most, they're the hardest thing to capture well, because the sound of drums change from room to room, from feet to feet. I mean, you can literally have a drum set set up and change the angle it's facing, and the whole sound of the room it's in will change. Whereas we're recording with guitars and bass most of the time is directly injected in anyway. Guitars are a lot now too. People aren't really recording guitars a lot with microphones as much as they used to. They still are, but not as much as they used to. Now that there's modeling amplifiers and all that stuff. But now you've got, oh God, anyway, I'm sorry. I just can't imagine spending a kick drum, dude. You either got it or you don't. And there's only so many ways you can make a kick drum sound, unless you're going for that fucking Lars Ulrich bouncing basketball sound that he had on fucking that god-awful Injustice for All record where the bass was turned off. But, Jesus, man, aside from all that, the other reason they had Lady Gaga with them, hate to bust your bubble on this one, metalheads. Hate to have to tell you if you didn't already know this. No, I enjoy telling this. No, I'm not going to lie to you. I enjoy it. I love it because I've been doing it for decades. I love busting the metalheads fucking letting the air out of their balloons with this one. You know they're a bunch of homos, right? Now again, I don't care if you're gay, whatever. No, but I'm just talking to these. You know how these metalhead guys. I mean, for years, I don't know if you guys. I mean, when I was a kid, I was a huge Queen fan. So when I went to school, I had Queen stuff on my notebook and whatnot. But I mean, it was about the music. It didn't factor into me. I mean, it did factor into me, but it didn't bother me that Freddie Mercury was gay or whatever. It's all about the music, still is, right? But yet these metalheads who were into Judas Priest and Metallica, and I like Judas Priest and Metallica as much as the next guy, but, well, I like the first 3 Metallica records. Nothing past that. Nothing past Ride the Lightning. That's pretty much it. Or Master of Puppets. That's it. Nothing past that. Those 3 records. But I'm the same way with Megadeth. Megadeth's one of my favorite metal bands, but I'll be honest with you. Like I said yesterday, aside from the new record Dystopia, which I actually listened to like 5 times in a row when I first got it and haven't listened to it since, still, Rust in Peace and Count for Extinction, as far as Megadeth records go, are the 2 that I go to. I never find myself listening to anything else in their catalog, but they have a lot more consistent of a catalog with only maybe really 1 or 2 bumps in the road, versus Metallica, where, Metallica hasn't put out any fucking thing worth of shit since Cliff Burton died. So, but listen, these guys for years, especially the Rob Halford one too, that was so hilarious. I'll never forget that. But I mean, look, Metallica are a bunch of fairies. I don't know if James Hetfield is. I don't think James Hetfield is, but for sure, Lars Ulrich and Kirk Hammett are gay. And not only are they gay, they're gay for each other and gay together. I mean, there are I'm not telling you, I'm not kidding you. Type Kirk Hammett and Lars Ulrich gay into Google Images, or type Lars Ulrich, Kirk Hammett tongue into Google Images. There are like 18 pictures of these guys sticking their fucking tongues in each other's mouths across decades. Was it comedian Cat Williams? I heard him say one time, somebody says something about you for long enough, it eventually becomes true, whether it's true or not. After 20 years, if somebody's called you a crackhead for 20 goddamn years, motherfucker, you're a crackhead. I mean, it's kind of the same thing there. I'm sorry, Lars and James, if there's pictures of you sticking each other's tongues in your mouths across decades, because that's what didn't make sense about the firing of Dave Mustaine. Because Dave Mustaine was fired because they said he was a drunk. Do you know what that band's nickname was while Dave was in the band and even after he was out of the band? Do you know what their nickname in the metal community was? Alcoholica. For years. They were all alcoholic drunks. Every fucking member in that band. And in that terrible movie they came out with, which I watched again recently, and I've got something to say about that in a bit too. It's on Netflix now. I watched it when it came out. And I never watched it again, but I watched it again just for the pure entertainment value. If you want to see the worst music with the worst band you've ever heard in your life trying to make a new record and just being up their own ass, you watch that movie. It's Some Kind of Monster, Metallica. It's on Netflix now. Dude, there's a little segment in there you can watch the extended part where they're like, it's totally staged, but still it's for the entertainment value. It's great, especially the extended one that's not in they kind of edited it down in the film, but it's like they're in the shrink's office with Dave Mustaine and Lars, and Dave's like crying and shit and telling him, oh, you hurt me and you never gave me a chance to make it better and all this gay shit. And then, Lars is just sitting there just taking it, You can tell it's so uncomfortable. You can tell Lars is just would want to be anywhere else than in that room with Dave Mustaine right at that moment. He'd rather tear his own eyes out and skull fuck the corpse of Cliff Burton before being in that room fucking 1 minute longer with fucking Dave Ginger Mustaine. I'm a ginger too, so that's what, it's kind of like brothers calling each other the N-word, they can get away with it because they are one. Well, me too. I can call you a fucking ginger, Dave, because I'm a fucking ginger, motherfucker. I'm not a Jew bastard like you are, though, Dave. I didn't think we'd catch that. Yeah, everybody thinks that. See, Dave, he became a born again Christian, so he thinks everybody's just now overlooks his Jewness. There's an interview with him several years ago. You might be able to still find it in the Wayback Machine of the internet if you look hard enough, where he totally let that out of the bag. I think his mother or somebody, he was like half Jewish or something, but he was an interview several years ago. I think if you type Dave Mustaine, Israel, you might find it there. There's an interview with Dave Mustaine where he talked about going over to Israel. And the quote from Dave was, and this is where I really, for the first time, was like, oh, okay. And then I saw him at a concert and he lifted his shirt up and he had a big fat Maltese cross belt buckle on. And then like 2 weeks later, he's on the Alex Jones show. And, I'm like, oh, okay. I get it now. I get it. But he said in this interview, the interviewer asked him something about, going to Israel or whatever. And he point blank says, oh, yeah, it was great. I got to go over there with a special military pass. So I got to see all the things the goy don't get to see. Straight, direct quote from Dave Mustaine. Not kidding you. Not fucking kidding you. No, let's break that down for a minute. Number one, got to go over there with a special military pass, huh? I wonder where he got that military pass from. I wonder if that's the same type of special passes I've heard his other buddy talking about before. So, and then, yeah, I got to go all the places the goy don't go. Well, according to you, Dave, and according to you being a born-again Christian, all that stuff, aren't you a goy, technically a goy, too? Isn't a goy anyone who isn't Jewish or isn't a practicing Jew? Isn't that how it goes? So that's rich, isn't it? Dave calls himself a born-again Christian, but at the same time, he's calling people goy. And getting to go tour Israel with a quote-unquote special military pass. Yeah. This is where I'm sorry, but this is just where my mind's at right now with this music stuff, because number one, music really is my true passion, and I'm a music historian. I know just as much about music, the history of music, and everything else as I do about any of this research. But it's been pent up and not locked out of me for many, many years. It's been suppressed because I've been focusing on other elements of this research. Now I'm in the beginning of the work mode for Spellcasters 2, and which is going to be dealing with a lot of this stuff within the music industry and showing all these connections. So I'm like a fucking tiger unleashed right now. You know what I mean? This is like in my wheelhouse. I've been waiting to talk about this stuff for so long. And you won't believe, I'm telling you, I wish I could lay responsibility for this. It's just been a result of just continuing to nonstop do the work. But man, the ante the ante and the bar have been raised by at least 2 or 3 notches for what's coming information-wise in Spellcasters 2. It really has. This stuff's going to blow you away when I tie it all together. But, so yeah, Metallica, they're a bunch of fairies. Dave wanted to, the only reason they kicked Dave Mustaine out of the band originally was because Dave and Lars and Kirk Hammett, some say they still are or were, or secret homosexual lovers together. I mean, do the math, crunch the numbers. What town did they come from? San Francisco. Okay. That's one. Then you got the whole sticking the tongues in each other's mouth. And then, of course, all the rumors. I mean, everybody, the metal community's talked about that for many years. And then, of course, the stuff they did with, they made a record with Lou Reed. They made a record. They've done stuff now with Lady Gaga. And, yeah, it just never made sense that they kicked Dave out of the band, but I just thought it was hilarious, man. There's Dave, all the shit he's been through with Metallica. He goes up to get his award, And as he's walking up to get the award, the fucking house band starts playing fucking Master of Fucking Puppets. And Dave's like fucking air guitaring along with it while he's up there. And I loved his response. Classic Dave. He was like, it didn't really bother me. They played it. I mean, they had to play something easy. They had to play. They couldn't. The house band obviously couldn't play any Megadeth. That's fucking hilarious. But I mean, again, I'm not just trash talking them. This is not just gay bashing or anything here. This has a legitimate connection to the information and has a legitimate connection to, again, what we were talking about yesterday concerning Lady Gaga and this, this whole thing of, whether or not trying to identify and pin down which of these artists are actually involved in the arts and the different illuminated fraternities and societies that use this different iconography in the music videos and everything else versus artists who are just doing what the record labels are telling them to do and putting out this stuff based on what the A&R guys want. Because I think that's, that's definitely valid and that definitely happens. And from the very beginning with Lady Gaga, I mean, I could just tell that obviously with her, the image was crafted and put together from the very, very beginning. But hold on just one second here. I always thought it was also weird back in, I can remember watching it was a year after Freddie Mercury died. I remember I was living with my grandparents going to school at the time, and our grandparents played bingo on Wednesday night, and they went and played bingo that night. And that was the night they were showing the Freddie Mercury tribute concert on TV. Back then everybody had one TV, that was it. Even though it was early 90s, still not very many people had multiple TVs yet, not for a few more years. So I was happy they were going out for the night so I could watch this whole concert. And even though at the time I was, still kind of into Metallica a little bit, I just thought it was weird that the first fucking band they had this tribute to Freddie Mercury where everybody was playing Queen music, the first band out of the gates was Metallica. And they didn't play any Queen music. They played 3 songs off the Black Album, off their newest album, and left the stage. They didn't even say, like, we're huge Queen fans, or this from Metallica. He just played these 3 songs and left. And then, of course, James came out later and played with Queen and Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath. They did Stone Cold Crazy, which really is the beginning of thrash metal, if you want to get right down to it. 1973. Queen invented a lot of different styles of music, including thrash metal. But listen to the song Stone Cold Crazy, dude. It's thrash metal 10 years before there was ever any thrash metal. Listen to the riff and listen to the beats per minute on that song. You'll see where that was really the genesis for it. No question about it. But it's very, very interesting that you would have Metallica there. I just, through the years, I continued to see all of these connections and indicators that pointed in the direction, along with the rumors, that you had gay people in that band. Here's what really struck me, and really, because I watched this, just a few days after that Metallica Lady Gaga thing. As I mentioned earlier, I watched the remake, or the not remake, but I guess the reissue or whatever it is. They put it up on Netflix, some kind of monster documentary. In this documentary, if you've never seen it, they were documenting this attempt to record a new record directly after the whole Napster fiasco happened, and the sort of opinion of Metallica by the general public was very low, and the opinion of each other within the band was very low. Jason Newsted, the second bass player they had that came in after Cliff passed away in the bus accident, left the band right around that time. So this film documents them going in trying to record this record, and meanwhile, while they're trying to record it, they can't get anything down. The band just really has this antagonistic energy with each other that just seems odd and out of place for them, especially if you see other stuff they've done. And I guess I just when I first watched this film, I had not gotten to the secret right or the CMP information, any of that stuff. So this didn't even register with me the first go round. But I always think, just like I said before, the yesterday on the show when I talked about something told me, I should watch the Grammys this year, even though I never watch. I know it's going to be a shit show. I know they're not going to have anything on it that I'm going to like at all. But something just told me this year I needed to watch it. I'm so glad I did. Same thing with that new Metallica thing. Something after watching that, the Grammy said, I saw that on Netflix. I was like, I should watch that again. Because I like to go back and watch stuff that I've seen before, because you catch things sometimes that you didn't catch the first time, or they didn't have any meaning to you the first time, or, because you didn't know about them. And I'll be damned if that wasn't the case with this Metallica thing. Blew me away. Where they're rehearsing and where they've got their studio and stuff set up, where they're trying to, in the first part of the film, when they're arguing and at each other's throats, can't get any music down. What music they are coming up with is literally, I've heard like guys in like 6th or 7th grade, middle schoolers, come up with better original music than what Metallica was coming up with in this situation. I'm not kidding you. It was the worst shit you've ever heard. And the whole record ended up being the worst shit you've ever heard. It's just terrible. It's terrible music. To think that there could be a band at that level producing that terrible of music is just bad. But anyway, here's the point. Here's what I didn't catch the first go-round. Eventually, James goes to rehab. They come back. They're not at the same place they were originally. And they don't say anything about this place to give anybody, they just call it by name to give anybody any reference or what it is, because if anybody found out what it is, there would be questions. They were recording they had rented, why you would rent this other than, there's no other reason you would want to rent this place to make a record in it other than if you were a sicko trying to get sicko vibes. And I don't think Metallica had any foreknowledge of what had taken place in this place that they were renting, but it seemed odd. Somebody must have. You know what I mean? If they didn't, they might have, but if they didn't, somebody in the chain of command did. They were at the Presidio, ladies and gentlemen, in San Francisco. Do you know about the Presidio, right? Go watch Lost Secrets, or not. Go watch Secret Right Volume 2 again. That's where Michael Aquino ran all of his. They had just go type Michael Aquino, the Presidio. All those stories about the child molestation and the sex with 8-year-olds and stuff going on in there. Sick, sadistic, satanic, pedophile shit went down with Michael Aquino in the Presidio in San Francisco as a part of these mind war stuff that I've documented here with the Spellcasters and the Secret Rite and the rest of it. See, folks, if you tuned out already, you're an idiot. Because I was bringing all this stuff back. You got to hear me out. No matter how long-winded it may be, I always have a point. Listen, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm going, okay, well, that makes sense. Look at this. James Hetfield, who's never had any kind of, mental problems or issues or seem to have any kind of addictions at all of a sudden they go into this fucking Presidio. Why Metallica would go, think about that. A band like Metallica, man, they could record at any studio, in any city, in any place in the world and rehearse with any kind of, because when you're recording stuff, you want someplace that's going to have a vibe. That's why, the Curse of Zeppelin and stuff, which, God, I don't even know if I'll have time to mention some of that. Jesus. This film's, the Spellcaster 2 is going to be, I'm telling you, it's going to be 2 discs, regardless. Blu-ray, maybe not, maybe 1 Blu-ray, but Jesus Christ. Led Zeppelin, man, great, the Curse of Led Zeppelin. That, how many of you had Robert Plant, son, very young son, died while at they were at the heart of Zeppelin mania, and then, of course, Jimmy Page. So Jimmy Page, that's what Zoso. Everybody, I see people with those Zoso tattoos all the time. Like, you know, that's a demonic entity that's been worshipped since the 16th century, right? What? The Zoso thing from Led Zeppelin, and you see that Jimmy Page would have that on on his amplifiers. Zoso is the name of a demon. That's why they were recording at Aleister Crowley's house, and you know, they were trying to get that dark vibe, and it came back, and of course, John Bonham ended up dying, and there's so much of this stuff, man, and to show how it all ties in and comes back around, it's insane. But here's, as I was watching this, I was like, God, it all makes sense. Metallica, so here's Metallica in the throes about to break up. They can't make any music. They're all at each other's throats. And I'm sitting there going, well, you know, if they were a real cool metal band would have owned that. You know what I mean? Like, if it was like, what's a good example? I'm trying to think of like a fucking, like it was King Diamond, you know, Merciful Fate, or fucking, what was that one? Venom. Venom was the first. I remember somebody gave me a Venom tape one time when I was like 13 or 14. And like, I'm not kidding you. Like, when I remember taking that shit home and listening to it, and I was like, I literally felt like two things. Like, number one, if there's a hell, I'm going to it for listening to this. And number two, fuck that. Demons might come from out from under my bed tonight. It was some evil shit, you know. It was some evil sounding shit. But, you know, a band like that, you know, would own it. You know, a true metal band would go into a place like the Presidio, where, honest to God, and this is all verifiable, the internet was around when Metallica was recording there in 2003, whenever it was. This stuff was out there then about the Presidio. It wasn't Alex Jones even makes a little hint at it in his very first film, America Destroyed by Design. He films some stuff with himself talking about the Presidio out in front of the Presidio, but does he bring up any of the Michael Aquino stuff or any of that? Of course not. But that wasn't ancient history. It wasn't, you know, unknown history even then. It was big news when it happened. But a real metal band would go into the Presidio and be like, yeah, you know, we're coming here to soak up the fucking dark Satan Metalocalypse or something, you know? The satanic Aquino energy with the fucking raped babies. But of course, Pustalica. So, you know, that only leads you to one conclusion, because a real metal band would have owned it. They would have been like, yes, we're making a dark, sick record, so we wanted to be. They weren't owning it or even mentioning why that place, you know, what the Presidio even, we're at the Presidio. But then after James goes to rehab, you know, they put a thing on the screen that says no more music was ever made at the Presidio again. Metallica never returns to the Presidio or something like that. And they don't ever bring it up or any of that. But it can't be a coincidence that they went there. I'm not accusing the band members of that, but again, just do the math. You've got the homosexual, stuff with, they're already from San Francisco. You got pictures of Lars and Kirk sticking their tongues in each other's mouths across 4 decades. They're jamming with Lady Gaga. They're playing at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, not even playing any of his music. I mean, it's just odd. Just strange. With all that money going to, you know, supposed AIDS research, but we know all those things are fronts and groups, just like Live Aid. That was a total front. Got all these people to believe that, you know, they're giving money for starving children, and no starving children were fed from Live Aid whatsoever. That money was used for CIA and MI6 joint operations in order to overthrow an African dictator to install a government-approved one instead in his place. That's why Geldof has ascended to the top ranks and has gotten away with murder. And like he told his ex-wife, you know, I know people, I can make people disappear, and we're going to be getting to all that stuff in Spellcasters 1 and 2. But it's just unbelievable, folks. You have literal, there are, it blows people's minds that people can't believe it. But there have been, there have been literal murderers, spies, assassins, people who have carried out political assassinations. Oh, yeah. In fact, there's one person in particular. who we'll be discussing in Spellcaster 2, who not only carried out, and I believe, the assassination of a major head of a major government of the world, also was responsible for the death of another major rock star and the death of his friend, who this person was had been being in a homosexual relationship with, who was about to out this person, which would have thus, not gone very well for this person because of their connection to Scientology. That's all I can say for now about that, but you'll see when the film comes out. Whew, man, oh man, oh man. So again, the mind control and psychological warfare elements of this that tie back into bands and musicians and the rest of this stuff. Again, there's a very fine line, and I think that that's something that needs to have more focus and attention paid to it, and discerning between these individuals who are clearly into these illuminated fraternity groups and ones who are rather doing it because they are puppets for members of these said groups, because everybody out there is just, again, as I talked about yesterday, throwing out these blanket terms and calling everything Illuminati, calling everything satanic, calling everything this, everything else, this, that, and the other. And to your average Joe who hears that 100 times, you're never going to get anywhere with it. And that, to me, is something I've been putting a lot more focus on. It's something I've been studying for a long time, but only really recently started to get more of a handle on. I think, especially with my film, The Spellcasters, is finding out a way to make this information palatable and digestible for not only people who are already, like many of you out there, are already on the level as far as research and as far as understanding and knowledge of goes, but also digestible and stuff for the people who are unaware of this stuff, because this stuff is crazy. It is insane. It is fantastic sounding when you first hear it. That's why so many people turn off of it, especially with the stuff like, the Paul McCartney stuff with the fake Paul and all that. And so that's one thing that, just for myself, I'm working on, hopefully other people work on that as well, is getting people to be able to understand this stuff and see that it's real instead of writing it off and saying it's coincidence. Everything is coincidence, unless it's something that goes against them. I love that. I'll give you an example. One of the things in that I'll be putting a lot of stuff in. I'm going to be putting in the film has to do with some of this. The history of music. Again, the history is written. History is written by the victors, and musical history is no different. It's written by the victors as well. Great example of this. One of the things that's been contentious in the music industry for many years, and one of the big arguments that fans and bands alike have had, is the origin of the quote unquote, the devil horns, the metal sign, and whatnot, which you can do a variety of ways. There's the hook'em horns, like the Texas college football team. There's the hook'em horns. There's the Baphomet. You got the two middle fingers, and the thumb touching. I don't like the Baphomet one. Like, it just doesn't. I don't know. I mean, I could see where, like, if you're into some real deal Satanism, that's what you would. That's what you want. It got to be your go-to right there. But if I'm just rocking out at a concert or something, I think I'd rather. And then there's the Spider-Man. That's the Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons does the Spider-Man, where he kind of looks like he's doing the metal sign, but he's got his arms outstretched. He even admits that came from Spider-Man, but he also simultaneously tries to claim he was the one that brought the metal horns into music. When actually, it's all, the argument is always that it was actually Ronnie James Dio who did it, because Dio, I think, did it on one of the album cover, maybe the first album cover, maybe it was, what was that album? It wasn't Born Again one, that was one of the later ones. The first one with Ronnie James Dio, whatever that first Sabbath album was. I think there's either the cover, I can't remember, But anyway, it's largely attributed to Ronnie James Dio with bringing the metal horns into music, but that's actually a falsehood too. He claims it's the Maloik, and it comes from something he saw his grandmother do to people who were, had the evil eye or whatever. But again, this is another example, and one of the many suspicious deaths, and there's been so many deaths in the music industry, and people have really just accepted them. So many people have just accepted. They've just accepted the official story to this day. They've never questioned it. The death of Randy Rhoads, that's a big one we'll be covering in the film, and it's definitely the case of that. But going back to the devil horns thing, because it always really comes down to Gene Simmons or Ronnie James Dio, the argument really that people make. But everybody really finally now, I think, is fully attributing it to Ronnie James Dio. And again, that's a falsehood. It's another one of those things that becomes accepted fact. Check this out. Black Sabbath, the band Black Sabbath with Ozzy, released their first album. Actually, we just had the anniversary of that not too long ago, a week or two ago. The very first Black Sabbath album in 1969. They also named the band Black Sabbath in 1969, even though they'd been playing together for about a year, and had some various different names and whatnot. They didn't have any of those songs like Black Sabbath or any of that stuff yet. Their story is that they were coming out of rehearsal one day and they saw a movie marquee playing the old Boris Karloff movie Black Sabbath or whatever, and they took the name from that. But check this out. Actually, a year before Black Sabbath formed, in 1968, there was an American band named Coven. And the name of the band, Coven, they had a record called, the name of the record was Witchcraft something. What was it? Witchcraft something. I can't remember the name. Everything's taking its time here. Give me a second. Come on. There it is. Now, Coven, Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls. That's the name of the record. Now, granted, the music on this is far from metal. But the album, Coven, or Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls by the band Coven, features, aside from the fact that it has a fucking guy that looks like fucking Benedict Cumberbatch's fucking dad or something, or like Benedict Cumberbatch was in a time machine and went to 1968. This dude looks like fucking Doctor Strange, I'm telling you. You've got the chick who was, I think she was the lead singer. Anyway, if you look at this cover, there they are, throwing the fucking horns, dude. 1968. Okay, that's number one. So 1968, they're throwing the horns with satanic imagery on this album cover, long before Gene Simmons or Ronnie James Dio. That's number one. But number two, one of the songs on this album is called Black Sabbath. And it gets weirder. The bass player in the band's name, I kid you not, O-S-I-E, Ozzy. Or he also goes by Oz. Ozzy Osbourne is the fucking bass player's name in this band. A year before Black Sabbath, a year before the Black Sabbath's first album, a year before they had that title, and many more years before you would start seeing everybody trying to appropriate the devil horns. Now, how come that is an accepted fact and accepted knowledge? They've also got upside-down crosses and shit, which became the key symbology and the key thing that for Black Sabbath was the up-down sound. That was the key thing of their image, was the upside-down crosses. And when I've heard this brought up to people before, that most people within the metal community say, well, it's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. No, it's just, right. That is not a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. But again, to the victors go the spoils, and the, revisionist historians of music. It's just hilarious. But Debbie, these, I mean, they were using some. This is like the birth and the beginning of what bands would later combine. You know, Black Sabbath. What Black Sabbath had that they didn't have. It's like that band Ghost. You know, I was talking about that band with my brother. Great image, but just terrible music. Same thing with Coven here. You know, Coven didn't have the bone crushing riffs or the jazz influenced rhythm section of Black Sabbath. So basically, you know, somebody in Black Sabbath, even though they claim they didn't, they've been asked about it, and Black Sabbath says that they'd never heard of this band, they never heard. Right. You got a song called Black Sabbath, you got a dude in the band called Ozzy Osbourne, and you're throwing up the devil horns. And then 10 years or 11 years later, Black Sabbath would have a different singer other than Ozzy Osbourne. And the first thing that new singer does when he comes to the band is throw the horns and become associated with that and claim that he brought it into the music world. Oh man. Yeah, there's some sick stuff. There's going to be so much. Look, I hate to bust your bubble, but if you're still enamored with the whole phony music, look, I love music and I love musicians and I love bands. And there's, you know, classic records I will always listen to and classic bands I'll always be into. But I learned a long time ago that it doesn't matter. You know, art is one thing, and the art that people produce is its own thing, and you can love that and be into it, and it's no problem. But you have to be able to allow yourself not to consider these people sacred cows and be aware of what's going on and how it absolutely ties in with the grand scope picture concerning this complete and utter psychological control of the human population in order to keep us in this state of arrested development that we can never evolve ourselves past in order to become to a level of thinking and a level of understanding of what's been used against us so that we can at some point figure out how to use it back against those bastards that have been using against us for all these years. That's really the key goal. All right, well, that's it for me tonight. I'll be back here more with tomorrow. We got about a week to get our operating costs covered, folks, so go ahead and start getting your donations, everything now. Get yourself a membership. We're not going to be putting full shows up on YouTube very much longer, partial shows and whatnot, and we're going to be getting into a lot of fucking key information, and we're going to be stepping our game up real soon. So we need your support. Go get your subscription to the archives. Go get yourself a download of one of my films or audiobooks in the audiobook shop at theglobalreality.com. Make a donation. Just support our work however you can and help us reach 100% of our operating cost goal by next Wednesday so we can keep this thing afloat. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.